help provide coastal protection. And, we can start making some improvements in how to do this by understanding how the ecosystem works. And so we have models of how the whole ecosystem fits together and how it is impacted by different sorts of problem, whether it's pollution, whether it's climate change, whether it's storms, and so forth. And this is some work we try to link in a lot of empirical information. This is an example of how the knowledge of the level of sediment in the water affects the ability for corals to reproduce. And although we can never predict the future, there's only ever going to be one future. But what we can do is understand how different interventions might give us better feasible futures. So what we would do with these models is that we might run the future of a coral reef that is a feasible future. So this might be an example, and you can see the reef recovers, and it's then impacted by different things. These might be coral bleaching events, they might be storms. And then we can rerun this trajectory, but this time we're adding some management benefit. So we might be, say, improving the pollution state. We might be putting in sewage control measures. We might be reducing the amount of sediment running off farmland into the rivers. And then we rerun exactly the same scenario with that difference in human intervention. And that tells us what the potential management benefit would be given that future scenario. But because we don't know what the future really holds, we do this multiple times for different sorts of futures. And that can tell us how different interventions are likely to benefit us in future. And this is something that a PhD student of mine, Abdi Prianto from Marine Spatial Planning, did this work. And he has summarized a lot of these model results in a statistical framework. The details of this aren't that important. But what it allows you to do is look at different scenarios. So for example, if we're plotting on the x-axis here, different interventions. So F is that we might be trying to manage the fishing. N is that we're dealing with the nutrient problems. C is that we're dealing with crown of thorn starfish outbreaks that eat corals. And the y-axis is how much the coral will improve over a period of time. And this was run for regions of Indonesia. And what we see from this is that if you're just improving fishing, in some of these places, it would give you a small benefit. And the sediment problems gives you a better value, whereas crown of thorn starfish control might not be so beneficial. But then as you combine different interventions, you find that some aren't very effective. So if you were to intervene on fishing and nutrients, you're not really going to do a lot better than just nutrients alone. And where you can get really good outcomes is when you're dealing with the right stressors. So in this case, if you're going to deal with two stressors, dealing with nutrients and crown of thorn starfish is the best strategy. The reason for that is that nutrients are a problem for, if you like, young baby corals. Starfish are a problem for adult corals. So by dealing with both of these things, there's no overlap. They complement each other. But another thing we have to bear in mind is we need to try to rebuild fisheries and achieve good biodiversity protection. And, we need to do things like consider how connected these fish populations are. And these are surgeonfish. This is in an afternoon, and they're having a spawning party. They're reproducing en masse. So the males are fertilizing the eggs that are being released by the females. And those fertilized eggs form larvae, and they will drift on the ocean currents for weeks looking for a new reef. And if we have information about this, we can revisit how we might design core zones or MPAs, marine protected areas, to help rebuild fisheries. And a key consideration here is also knowing how big the reserve needs to be. if you look at the size of the home range of fish, that bigger flippers design marine reserves to help rebuild fisheries might work. And we've got three different outcomes to implement a policy of 30% of protection of coastal Asia's current policies, or 10%, which is the UN Aichi target. What would the benefit be this fishery? And a negative here in pink is that there is a loss to the fishery. A green outcome is that the fishery achieves what's called pretty good yield, which means that it's very close to its maximum sustainable yield, which would be the best placed, which is a plus, means the fishery is improving. People are catching more over time as a result of that intervention. And if we've got heavily fished, this is what we find. If you had 10% area protected, 2 million scenarios of different reef or different fish in general, what proportion of those fisheries would benefit versus lose? And it tells us 10% of fish species would probably do worse, or rather the fishery for those species would do worse than MPA. And this is usually for species that we don't currently fish. There are species that don't release their larvae very far. Much about this. But it tells us that the majority of species, about 80% of them, would be showing an improvement in better, and a small proportion would actually be able to be managed at a high level. But as you increase the area under protection, or fisheries become well managed, but the number of fish species that do not benefit does not change. So the pink area remains not too concerned. So the message here is, if you can achieve up to 30% protection, that's a very strong benefit to rebuilding coastal fisheries. Okay. And there's materials available if people want to read further about this at this website. Another issue is about how big should those reserves be, and we've developed tools that allow you to estimate how many species would be protected depending on the size of the reserve that you have. And that's a very practical thing that people can look at. And generally, reserves need to be between 5 and 10 kilometers in size to have a good effect on fisheries. But the last question is, where would you do this? And this is where the marine planning is very important. And when you have information on how those coral or fish larvae move from place to place, that can help you choose wisely. So an example would be, if you're trying to achieve a conservation benefit, you're mostly going to focus on reefs that are able to withstand themselves without dependence on lots of other places. In other words, they're self-sufficient. And we might prefer places that retain many of their larvae. They're just not dependent on other locations. If they get extra larvae coming from other places, that's great, but it isn't a requirement. In contrast, if you want a fisheries benefit, then the best thing you can do, if you know that the site at the bottom there with the $3 is the most important fishing ground, and many of the new fish are coming from a reef that's located upstream that is sending new baby fish to the areas that are being fished, then putting your protection in the brood site upstream should give you good benefits to that fishing ground. And we can use connectivity information, this is in the Sundarbans seascape, to try to identify these locations. So here, for example, are places that are strongly retaining their larvae. And you can design networks of protection that maximize those fisheries benefits using this information. And again, these tools have been developed in Indonesia and they have been used by government for planning in a variety of locations. So to conclude, keeping a handle and keeping observing the biodiversity on coral reefs is important. There's a lot at stake, especially for fisheries productivity. If we allow reefs to degrade, that will impact our productivity. Often, one of the great things you can do to intervene is recognize that some reefs have got very different futures than others. Some are much more resilient, for example. But we definitely need sound marine spatial planning. And Indonesia is very progressive with its marine spatial planning. And so it's great to see that these biodiversity considerations are being considered as part of the marine spatial planning process. And I would argue that, science is important at trying to help management, helping managers make better decisions, because we only ever have a relatively small budget to do things, which means we can only intervene at a relatively small number of sites, especially if you're thinking of restoring a habitat. So using science to choose the places where you could be most effective is really helpful. And of course, we have lots to do. So thank you for your attention. And I hope that just helps make the case for achieving biodiversity goals alongside everything else.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mambi, for the explanation. It was very interesting topics concerning about the underwaters, because we in Indonesia, we seldom focus on that because we cannot see it, so we don't understand the importance of keeping our reefs and corals. Yeah, so with your explanation, it makes it easier for us to better understand the importance of keeping this habitat, even though we cannot see it. Okay, and the next presentation from our third speakers is to Mr. Amodek Inkau. Is that correct?
Yes.
How I pronounce your name? Okay, Mr. Inkau. But first, about you first to our audience. So, Mr. Rajamanggala University of Technology Sriwijaya. It's in
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so how long is that from
around
Bangkok?
8 hours. 8 hours by car and 1 hour by plane. 8 hour by
1
car.
hour by plane,
and
8 hour
1 hour by
car.
plane.
Okay, so I've never been there, so I would
you
like to
can come
go
here.
there. Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Inkau here got his bachelor degree from Rajamanggala University of Technology Tanyaburi, and you have been to Surabaya, right?
Right, 4 months in 2012.
2012 in the exchange student program.
Yes.
Okay, nice. And then he got his master degree from National Taipei University of Technology. So I see here that Mr. Inkau have some industrial experiences. He had worked in Isuzu Motors, Thailand, and also in Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand, and also Air Electric Thailand. So he has many experiences in the industry. So this will, I believe this will help Mr. Inkau to know better about the business administration thing. Okay, so please welcome Mr. Inkau.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good
It's
morning.
a great pleasure to be here today, and I'm feeling a little bit nervous because this kind of event is it's international event. Okay, so first let me share the screen. Oh, sorry.
Okay,
All right,
we can see it
everyone.
clearly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me hide it. Okay. So my name is Amon Inkau, and just became a lecturer at the Faculty of Management Technology, Rajamongkol University of Technology, Sivichai, just for a year. And then it's a great pleasure to be here today. And today I would like to share with you about the opportunities and challenges of transformation in maritime economic perspective. And the focus on here today is on fisheries and aquaculture. Okay. Why fisheries and aquaculture are important? Because fish and aquaculture, aquatic products can feed people all over the world. And the price of fish products is not that expensive. It has some expensive price, right? But compared to the meat and chicken and pork or any kind of meat nowadays, the price is increasing due to the inflation. But the price of the fish still remain the same, doesn't increase that much. And the world population is also growing. So having enough fish to feed people is very important. And the aquatic animal production is forecasted to grow another 14% by 2030. So actually, the number is still growing compared to the forecast like 10 years ago. It is forecasted to a number, but now at the present time, the number has already increased beyond that forecast. So it will increase more 14%. So that means that by increasing this 14%, there will be the expense of just like the pollution to the environment. So it is very important to deal with all the pollution and do well with the waste management. And here, okay, the next one is a blue transformation can meet food security and environmental sustainability. Okay, even though the growth is going up, we need to make sure that the growth is sustainable. It can ensure the food security to people in the world and can reduce the number of hungry people in the future. Okay, and aquatic food system are powerful solution. Blue transformation requires a commitment from the public and private sector. Okay, and Indonesia is an island country, right? And more than 60% or 70% of Indonesia is attached to the sea. So Indonesia has a really high potential of the fish, right? Fish products and also the many things, and is exported to other countries as well. Okay, so this is the brief information about the Indonesia fish China. Okay, and the world's coral species make up 73 species are in Indonesia, and Indonesia consumption of animal protein comes from fish accounted for 54%, and the national GDP 2.6%, and the production growth compared to the growth is growing 4.55%. Okay, and production. Thank you for Professor Budi for sharing me some pictures. And this is kind of the small and medium enterprise in the local community has a lot of local and medium enterprise. And on the right hand side, this is the largest scale exported to another country, to other countries as well. Okay, so it will be very powerful longer, and also the better management in uh, in the local community, give more loans to the local production, local cannery. Okay, so now top 10 global capture producers. The largest producer of the fish products is China here. Okay, so any other countries in Southeast Asia? Vietnam is produce a lot of fish products and also seafood also. Okay, so here let's have a look at the top 10 exporting countries of aquatic products by value. This is the information from 2020. China is the largest exporting countries, but Vietnam, Thailand is also included in this list, but Indonesia is not included. So there must be something exporter of fish, but Indonesia is no producer. But in terms of exporting, Indonesia is not included. Probably 12 out of from this list. So I think investing and doing more to become in the top 10 exporting countries of aquatic products. Okay, so here is the top 10. We can notice that most of the countries included in this list is the high income country, right? Thailand is actually not included, but actually Thailand, just like the tuna canfish, actually we import a lot from other countries and process in Thailand. Okay, and here is a body called Thai Tuna Industry. All the company members are compliant with the regulations, and also make them ready to export to before Thailand can produce only 10% of the tuna. We can catch only 10%, and more, but we imported a lot from China, Taiwan, and also Indonesia. And on the right hand side, you can load it onto a truck in West Java, and after that, it is brought to process in Thailand and then okay. And RCEP, what is RCEP? RCEP is Regional Comprehensive Economic as of July 2022, and this has become the world's largest free trade agreement. It comprises countries in Asia Pacific, and Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar, and Indonesia and can export a lot. First, we can export and trade within the trade block within our region. Each country is also reduced, so this means that we can trade more freely, and Indonesia can also need to have a look in the future if Indonesia can strengthen the competitiveness of the fish export or not, or lose competitiveness on this. And then, yeah, let me talk about the aquaculture AI technology. This actually, so this technology, they put the camera between the tank. It was tested in 200 tanks of fish, and then after that, the AI technology will capture the size the width and the length automatically for the farmer to see how much food, how much feed should they give to the fish, because the food that is feed cost, so they want to reduce the cost. The cost of the feed to for the fish is about 50 more than, so this technology can help decrease the cost a lot. And also they also adopted some technology like they use a drone with the camera to detect the tide and the density of the aquatic animals in the seas. So this will help the future aquatic farming a lot. Agriculture organization program priority is to make healthy and nutritional aquatic food available to all. The seafood is not expensive, and it is happen and create more more seafood farmer nearby the sea. So this will create the job for living in those areas have a very little income. And exporting will increase also, and it will also so here is a blue transformation. They want to reduce the number of the hungry people, and also want to keep wide. And important because sometimes overfishing fish, so the fish cannot reproduce anymore. So this, so if the management is good, there will be more fish. Is also very important. This is to ensure the social economic and secure nutritional outcomes. Okay. All right. The opportunity is as Indonesia is also the world in yellowfin. So Indonesia should play an important role in exporting tuna more, process in the country more, adopt in the larger scale to enjoy the economies of scale, right? Because the demand is also very rid of the COVID-19 pandemic. People avoid eating out, right? They eat to eat very easy, so they buy canned fish a lot. And actually, the Thailand's canned fish tuna last year, and the major importing country is America. America is actually imported our followed by Vietnam and Indonesia. So yeah, Indonesia actually has high potential, and with possible for Indonesia to export more. But Indonesia still needs to and to enjoy the more economies of scale. Foreign direct investment to make the tuna or the canned fish processing fish industries that can reduce the cost for the fish farmers, just like the AI which I've shown you earlier. And nowadays, as I read, Indonesia government is supporting a lot, is supporting local farmers a lot. So this is this probably create a big change for Indonesian seafood and exporting canning processing industry. But anyway, there's still some challenges The first challenge probably is because of the seaport efficiency. The development of the cold chain system, the refrigerator system is very important because fish is easily rotten, right? So refrigeration system should be enough. And the competitiveness in terms of product, price, and service, these need to be taken into account because Indonesia is pretty far away, and there are many islands. So when considering the price of the things, just like the freight charge of the vessel, of the container. So yeah, because Thailand, we have like two oceans on the left side and on the right side. So it's loading and also um, uh, exporting. But Indonesia, actually, as I read in the news, Indonesia has developed really, really fast compared to 10 years ago. It's like completely difference of importing countries. So by importing the products to other developed countries, like not the same as the ASEAN consumption. In our countries, probably we don't have like that much regulation. It's not that we don't have, but when exporting to those countries, much more regulation and requires a time of paperwork. And yeah, the next thing is taken into account because Thailand, Vietnam, time, and Indonesia still need to fight to overcome poverty. Is also very important because nowadays people is right, so they want to check with the supplier if the supplier get the fitting out clean and safe or not. Okay, so yeah, it's a lot of activities, and also it's a high cost technology is available, just like the AI, the IoT, and stuff. But the cost of technology is still very high because it is invented not a long time ago. And by doing this in Indonesia or even in Thailand, is a big money. So yeah, every party has to calculate, right, if it is worth investing or not. Okay, so this is all for my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Inka, for the presentation. Now we are in the question and answer session. So for the audience, if you'd like to give your question to our distinguished speakers, you can type it in the chat room. And also, maybe for the first question, directly to our speakers. Okay, I see here that Miss Dewi Jasmiwati raised her hand.
Thank you very much,
Miss Dewi.
Okay. I would like to thank for all speakers who have give the information and knowledge today. I would like to ask first to Mr. Tatit from Bakamla. From your explanation, we can see that we have many problems. One of it is oil spill in the sea. And according to the data, how about the destruction of the oil spill in the government regulation about it? It is effective or not effective? This is from the Australia. About the eventually, so the fish, I mean, the fish like a hope for the fish. And I want to ask about the how is your estimation now, especially in the Asia Pacific Ocean. So this is very nice presentation about the economy or about the Thailand fisheries productivity. I mean, fisheries to gross national product increase the productivity. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dewi. The first question is for Mr. Tatit about oil spill in Indonesia. We would like for Mr. Tatit to answer this first question, please.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Devi, for your good question. I tried to answer about oil spill. Our effort to overcome to face the problem of oil spill usually most often occurs in waters of Bintan. Of course, we will deploy our asset or our patrol boat independently, and also we conduct joint patrol with related institutions like marine police, Indonesia LP, or port authority, supported by National Space Agency 8 dari lembaga antariksa penerbangan, which can be we also use our center oil spill and to know the history, the track of the oil, and so now we conduct the joint coordination, which is used by our situ center, and again we also make good cooperation with our partner, especially with Maritime Pollution Institution in Singapore. We call it Maritime Pollution and Police Coast Guard Singapore institution. I think that's my answer for your question, Ms. Devi.
Thank you.
Okay, for the second question, it is for Mr. Mambi. Mr. Mambi?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Debbie, for that question. You know, there's two things that we need to have a healthy coral reefs in Asia Pacific in the future. One of them, of course, is continued local protection of human impacts. So improving the watershed, reducing the excessive fishing in areas, especially where the watershed is delivering nutrients. But the other thing is we need action mitigating emissions. And we've done some work looking at what does the future hold for coral reefs if we change the action on climate change. And there's a huge range. So at one extreme, if we were to achieve 1.5 degrees of warming, which is the most ambitious target, of course, then what we see is the amount of thermal stress increases a little bit towards the middle of the century, and then it declines by the end of this century to where it is now, right? So that's a very good outcome. If you were to go to 2 degrees of warming, then we see that the level of stress increase by a modest amount by the end of the century. We measure the level of warming of the ocean using a scale called degree heating weeks. At the moment, the worst we tend to see is a value of about 8 or 10. And I apologize for the noise behind me. They're having a sports day at the university, and I can't silence the guy who's doing the speaking. But if we were to follow some of the more pessimistic high carbon futures, we would be looking at heat waves that are 4 times more intensive than they have been to date. And there's no way that you can see a good future for corals if we do that. So we need to continue to mitigate emissions passionately and aggressively, and combine that with a continued marine planning of local effects.
Okay, so that's the answer from Mr. Mambi about the future of corals. And then the next question is for Mr. Inkau about Thailand fisheries contribution.
All right. Okay. Thailand fishery make up around 2% of the total GDP of the country, and in the agriculture sector, it is contributed to 10% of the total number of the Okay, and for the policies that the government is trying to do, they're trying to strengthen all the aquatic farmers to be smart farmers, and they're trying to use a new technology in order to increase the efficiency and also to reduce the cost, the production cost. And they also trying to detect and also make sure that all the fishery products have standard to be able to for the to be competitive in the long run. And also there are some research about the new information and technology, and also try to add some values. Okay, yeah, that's what I could answer. And I also got a question from Pak Budi, right? Okay, that okay, how can
we
yeah,
hide... the question in the chat room.
Okay, I have how you develop collaboration between Indonesia and Thailand. Okay, how can we hire the industry to join in collaboration to develop the okay. Actually, Thailand doesn't have that high technology yet compared to other developed nations, but we are still developing so many things. But we still need to depend the advanced technology from other countries as well. So, what can be more possible is a joint business, is a joint venture of Thailand, Indonesia, and also some advanced nation, and we invest together. Actually, Thailand is testing a lot already in the fishery industry, but we still need to depend the advance from other countries. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I think the question is personally sent to you because we cannot see for the general chat room. Sorry, but it's okay because you have explained it. And now we go to the next question. Is from from Miss Mia Maulita. So she is a student of our, and the question is for Mr. Tatit as a Bakamla, and she asked that, as we all know, when Mrs. Susi served as the Minister of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, she had a policy of sinking ships that carried out illegal fishing in Indonesian waters. Is Mrs. Susi previous policy still being used today, or has there been a new policy change? And what kind of new policy that exists today? And the other question is for Mr. Mambi. She asked about how do you educate the public, especially fishermen, not to do destructive fishing in order to preserve the aquatic ecosystem. So I would like to have Mr. Tatit to answer the first question.
Thank you, Miss Maulidia, for your question. I try to answer. When we are talking about policy of the fisheries ministry, especially the previous minister, Mrs. Susi Pujiastuti, dealing with a sinking ship. According, in my opinion, that policy is still could be conducted actually, dealing with law and national regulation, because sinking is a part of trial and prosecution. But according to your question, what about that policy? It still will be carried out. I would like to inform that Bakamla is not under the Ministry of Fisheries. So as far as I know, the Ministry of Fisheries now they have their own policy for managing sustainable fisheries. We call it in Indonesia penangkapan ikan terukur. But when we are talking about enforcement, up to now, Indonesian law is actually I would like to answer in Indonesia, but actually the policy and the regulation remains the same. Different is just the process, whether the ship will be what we call it in English, detained by our country. As far as I know, the Mrs. Susi Pujiastuti is just conduct the, we call it effect jera in a short time. What is effect jera? The deterrence effect in a short time for violators. Is it enough?
Is that clear enough, Miss Mia?
I hope it's clear.
Okay, it's she said that it's pretty clear. Thank you, Mr. B.
So, sometimes the best action, a lot of the reason that people use destructive fishing practices is fishing. They're not very good at fishing, and so good fishing. And sometimes the best way you can address that responsible fishers and strategies can be extremely useful. Ocean plastic that was done in Salaya, South Sulawesi, and it was really effective. But really consider the problem and find their own solution. That's really the way that one might have to address issues of part of it, but coupled with support to try to help people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Mr. Mambi. And also, Mr. Mambi already attached an article, the 1.5 warming effect. Okay, so maybe the student getting to know better about the importance of these the right actions to save the coral reefs. Okay, is there anyone in the audience wants to ask the question lively? Okay, so there's a question from our professor, Professor Masroro Lili Ekowanti, and this question is for Bakamla, I believe. So, Prof. Lili asked that I see that Bakamla is not yet qualified to be the Sea and Coast Guard. There should be an independent Sea and Coast Guard directly under the president. What do you think? So I believe this question is for Mr. Tatit.
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Professor. I would like to confirm your question. According to you, that nowadays Bakamla is not to be qualified, and yet there should be independent Sea and Coast Guard directly under the president. Professor, I would like to inform you, all the participants, that since 2014, Bakamla is as a board directly under the president. And as I know that president is already mentioned that Bakamla is the embryo of our Indonesia Coast Guard in the future. So Bakamla has already shown the good, we call it good movement. One is the success of the catching the big or the giant two motor tanker in 2021, which is conduct the oil transshipment, and also many prestasi itu apa achievement, a good achievement when Bakamla catch the violator, it is bring narcotica in Seribu Island. Why the Bakamla day to day will be a better institution? Because we are supported by the national law, which is stated in paragraph 61 and 62 and 63 on regulation number 34/2014. We have authority and we have a function to conduct law enforcement at sea. I hope this answer is clear enough to confirm, to make sure the professor that Bakamla will be qualified day to day in the future. Professor, thank you.
Okay, is that clear enough, Professor Lily, for the answer?
Okay.
Okay, so the next question is for Mr. Peter Mambi, and the question is, how do you solve conflict of interest, marine spatial planning between national government, provincial government, and local government? I believe this is the question based in Australia. And yeah, Mr. Mambi, could you please answer this question?
It's a very good question. And I think if I knew the answer to this, I would probably be a lot wealthier than I am now. I'd have some real secrets. You know, it is a challenge. You know, in the Australian context, we really have two scales of management. We have national government and we have state government. And they each have different jurisdictions, as they do in Indonesia. And they have to work very hard at doing things jointly. And so they have a lot of practical agreements to co-manage aspects of the marine environment so that they jointly do the monitoring of it. They jointly do the enforcement of things. But, you know, it's always something of a challenge. And so it's very hard to know what is the best way to deal with this problem. You know, that the fact that much of the power was taken from district levels to province levels in Indonesia, you know, creates some challenges for people to work with. But then working at a small scale, often, of course, there's real value in working at a larger scale because you're more likely to have the resources and capacity to do marine spatial planning that at each of the 350 districts. So I don't really have a good answer to your question, I'm afraid. It's something that requires continual communication. And I haven't seen a lot of really good examples of how it can be done very, very well. I wish I had. So thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you for the explanation, Mr. Mambi. So for the next question, we have a raised hand from Mr. Budi. Mr. Budi, are you here with us? Mr. Budi? Okay, maybe he's not yet with us. Okay, so is there, sorry, hang on. Okay, so is there any other question from the audience? Yes. Mr. Budi? Okay.
Please use chat room. Please.
Hello?
Please use chat room.
Sorry, I vaguely hear you.
Please use chat. Please use chat.
Can you say it louder, please? Okay, please. Okay, while we wait for Mr. Budi, can we, for other audience, you may type down your question for our speakers. If you have some connection issue, you can type down your question in the chat room. Okay, I think that's I think that's all for the first session. Okay, we got another question here, Harry. Oh, I see, sorry. The next, the question is from Jackson Simamora. Okay, question is for Mr. Tatit as Bakamla. He asked that in this year we have Peraturan Presiden Decree number 34 year 2022 about Rencana Aksi Kebijakan Kelautan Indonesia. Do you think this rule can develop our maritime and how to integrate many authorities in maritime sectors? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for your good question. If I may answer with a short answer, will be yes, Mr. Jackson. Yes, we will can conduct to integrate many authority in maritime domain area because inside the peraturan presiden, what we call it, presiden regulation, there will be another document such as first is national policy for maritime for security and safety. Then this document will be should be finished before the end of this year. Then secondly is already signed by Menteri Polhukam. We call it National Integrated Patrol. Then now Bakamla will be supported by the Situ Center of related institution or supported institution, which is consists of 5 related institution. The institution have also Situ Center. Then the Situ Center of related institution will be integrated in IMIC, Indonesia Maritime Information Center. Today and for 3 months ahead, will build integrated system of information system. So for sure that Bakamla will be able to integrate many authority in the area of operation, in the area of information sharing, also in the area in the policy. I hope that this answer will satisfy you, Mr. Jackson. Okay. Or we can continue discuss and talk each other in Indonesian language, Mr. Simamora.
So is the answer clear enough for you, Mr. Simamora? Oh, you can unmute your microphone. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Sabrina and Mr. Tatit. I think it's enough. Thank you, your answer.
Okay. And the next question, I believe this will be our last question because we almost got to the time for session 2. And the question is from Mr. Edi Purnama. Mr. Edi Purnama?
Yeah, okay. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes, we can hear you clearly.
Thanks. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Edi. I am from Bandung, from Universitas Nasional Pasir Bandung. Actually, I really like go fishing. Yeah. Maybe I'm the one of the Indonesian hobbyists of Indonesian fishing, including with my friends, Professor Dr. Duran from UPI. Sometimes I go fishing to Pantura ya, Pantai Utara or sometimes Selatan. In Pantura, so I would like to, I find out something that there are a lot of, let's say, case in ocean, yeah, I mean, such as leak of the rig, rig, kebocoran salah satu rig ya. I found many times that when I was fishing, that I found that leak of the rig atau kebocoran daripada satu rig atau mungkin banyak sekali ya. My question is how does Bakamla and ordinary some let's say that former into stations that how do we manage about let's say that pencemaran salah satu dari laut terhadap ikan dan consumption. Ini sometimes ini lebih penting lah, it is really important for us to manage the problem. I think it's not only about the fishery and industry, but let's say that pencemaran itu is really important for us because there are a lot of people, maybe 1 million of people consume the fish in Pantura and so on. So I think how does Bakamla, ini untuk Bapak Katib ya, mungkin I would like to ask you, apakah Bakamla mempunyai badan khusus tentang pencemaran lingkungan? And then the second to Dr. Peter, I would like to ask you about how does microbiology between Australia and Indonesia, maybe do we have to, or we must have maybe cooperation between studying of microbiology in Australia and in Indonesia, because as we know that Indonesia and Australia have the same borders, because microbiology in Australia and Indonesia, maybe it can be moved from flow or stream of the water, so it affect each other. How do we manage about let's say that the borders about the maritime in Indonesia or microbiology? Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Edi Purnama, and we would like to have Mr. Tatit to answer the first question about the oil leak, the authorization of Bakamla to deal with the leaking oil from the oil rig in northern coast of Java Island.
Thank you, Mr. Edi. Try to answer your question dealing with oil spill. To be honest, that Bakamla, we don't have any special treatment for oil spill.
Yeah.
I will inform that we have already good cooperation with Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup.
I see.
We have already good cooperation. So when we conduct or deploy our joint patrol, we always involve the personnel, the staff ahli of Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup join with our patrolling activity. In my opinion, talking about the oil spill, the main important thing is how to detect, how to mencegah, how to how to avoid is very difficult, because you see there's a very bad attitude of us. But for us, for the law enforcement, the main important thing is how to detect there is oil spill in this area. So we also make a good cooperation with LAPAN, and we use satellite technology to detect the oil spill in the waters. And then we also use another technology how to track some ships which is past that area, so we can record or we can detect a certain tip, then we will catch. We will inspect the some ships around the area which is oil spill.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tati. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the answer from Bakamla. And the next question is for Mr. Peter Mambi about microbiology cooperation between Indonesia and Australia.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I agree that Australia and Indonesia share a lot of common interests in a geographic area. Obviously, the Timor Sea and the sea around coming up to Papua, we have very close interests there. In terms of microbiology, I think I don't know the extent to which that's on government radars in terms of how to collaborate. My sense is that there's a lot we could get much closer together as countries collaborating on areas of mutual interest. My sense is that there hasn't been as much country to country engagement recently, at least from the Australian side. And that's partly because Australia has kind of pivoted towards the Pacific politically. And, many of us are very keen to see the strengthening of relationships with the ASEAN area. And so, there are strengths there, but I think it could be built upon a great deal. And at this stage, many of those collaborations are on an institutional level without much government support. So, for example, at my institution, University of Queensland, we've had lots of ongoing relationships with partners in the Indonesian government and other research institutions. And, those have been driven in part by the relationships among academics and amongst scientists. And I think that's great. But microbiology is it's not my field, but it's such a fast moving and important field. I would think there would be huge scope for strengthening that. But I think it would have to come under an umbrella of greater government recognition of the need for science to collaborate. I mean, one of the great things about scientific collaboration among countries is that it's very practical. It's not political. It's a way of engaging that creates joint ventures that, it's a very sort of soft level of diplomacy. So, if there's anything we can do to strengthen that, we will certainly try. And I hope the same is true in Indonesia. But yeah, I have personally lots of long-term collaborations in Indonesia. And, I would love to see our government strengthen its commitment to supporting those sorts of relationships. But I'm just one voice.
Thanks, Dr. Peter. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the questions, Mr. Edi Purnama. And now we have come to the end session, the end of our first session. I would like to thank for our distinguished speakers, Mr. Tatit, Mr. Mambi, and also Mr. Inkau for the explanation and the enlightenments for us. And thank you for being here today with us. And for the second session, we will start with the presentation from Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Zaki Ahmad. Okay. He is from University Utara Malaysia. He is now the director of Asian Institute of International Affairs and Diplomacy, School of International Studies. And his academic qualification is he got his PhD in Maritime Policy in University of Wollongong, Australia. He also got his Master of Art in Maritime Policy there in Wollongong University. And also, and for his bachelor degree, in international relations with concentration on Asia. He got it from University of Memphis, USA. Okay, and okay, please welcome Mr. Muhammad Zaki from Malaysia. Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Madam Moderator, for your kind introductions.
Okay, you're welcome.
I think the first thing that I would like to do is to share my presentation slides. And,
yes, please. Thank you.
Saya.
Okay, we can see it clearly.
Alhamdulillah. Bentar ya.
Yes.
Nanti saya akan masuk. Because I try to give a full image. I just want to, maybe I can wait for a while. Later on, I'll show you. But can you guys still see the slides?
Yeah, we can see the slides clearly.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. All right, to begin with, I would like to wish Assalamualaikum and selamat pagi semua, Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu dan Mas dan Mbak. I would like to convey my gratitude to the organizing committee for inviting me to give a presentation regarding blue economy. And specifically, I'll be looking at the strategy of achieving a sustainable blue economy with a focus on the implementations in coastal and small island developing states. Now, the very fact is that one cannot deny that the significance and contributions of the ocean and sea to humanity and natural environment is something that one cannot deny. And 2/3 of the Earth's surface are covered by the oceans and the sea. These vast maritime areas are home to rich and diverse biodiversity of flora and fauna, some of which, unfortunately, belong to endangered marine species such as transboundary fish species like Atlantic bluefin tuna. The oceans and the seas act as a climate and temperature controllers, and nearly 50% of the Earth's oxygens are produced from these maritime areas. In addition, the oceans are also the largest carbon sink, meaning that they absorb carbon dioxide in the atmosphere emitted mostly from industrial-based fossil fuel emissions. And the world ocean and sea continue to offer abundant renewable and non-renewable marine resources, many of which remain unexplored and exploited, particularly in the forms of mineral in deep seabed areas. At this moment, billions of peoples around the world relying on the oceans and the sea for their livelihood, food, recreational activities, as well as many of countries surrounded by the ocean and sea, notably developing small island states, rely on ocean-based sectors for their revenue as well as for job opportunities. These include marine capture fisheries as well as tourism sectors. Despite the profound so-called contributions of the oceans and sea to the natural environment and humankind, it is worth noting that these vast maritime areas are not exempted from experiencing a myriad of ongoing problems and challenges. Now, for example, the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations, or FAO, estimated that fish stocks in many economically important fishing grounds are alarmingly declined due to overfishing, marine pollution, as well as bycatch practices. It is estimated by the FAO that approximately 1/3 of the world fish stocks are overexploited now. Another driving factors contributing to this declining fish stocks is IUU fishing. As already mentioned just now by our esteemed presenters, IUU fishing activities have been prevalent in both coastal waters and even in the middle treacherous remote oceans, thousands of kilometers away from land. Destructive fishing methods such as fish bombings, cyanide fishing, as well as illegal transshipment of fish at sea and foreign fishing encroachments are some of the examples of IUU fishing that are quite common and often recorded in this part of the world, especially in Southeast Asia. Indonesia is one of the coastal states that continue to face these IUU fishing problems. Indonesia's continue to lose around 20 billion worth of fish annually to IUU fishing alone. And globally, between 26 billions to 50 billions US dollars were lost due to IUU fishing. Now, other alarming trends that currently affecting the oceans and the sea is the destructions of and damages on sensitive marine ecosystems such as coral reefs, seagrass, and mangrove forests. Besides IUU fishing, marine pollution incidents have become a common phenomena involving, for example, such as oil spills, total suspended solids, including plastics and styrofoams, as well as organic materials coming from land-based, even vessel-based activities. Now, another issues of concern is global warming and climate change. And this is something that is quite relevant to many countries considered to be categorized as small islands developing states. Many communities living in the low-lying areas, which extensively depended on marine resources for food and employment, are under threat by the rising of sea waters, beach erosions, and coral bleaching. These problems are more reportedly prevailing in many small island nations in the Pacific Oceans, in the Indian Oceans, as well as in the Caribbean Sea. Now, other worrisome sea-related issues that could threaten the safety of shipping and potentially disrupt seaborne trade movement is the increasing incidence of piracy and sea robberies in the waters where major global shipping routes are located, such as the Malacca Straits and Gulf of Aden. Bear in mind, there are about approximately 90% of global trades depending on shipping sectors. Now, regardless of these aforementioned problems, the actual and potential benefits and opportunities generated from the use of marine aquatic resources and environments under the framework of blue economy sectors cannot be discounted. Now, the ongoing maritime-related issues and challenges may have directly or indirectly affect or even undermine long-term sustainability and robust growth of economic sector, but such development does not discourage developing coastal and small island states to continue pursuing and harnessing the benefits obtained from these blue economic sectors. Therefore, the outline of my presentation is I would like to focus on giving some form of definitions of blue economy and the essence of blue economy. It is a concept that has been promoted and gained popularity since the last 2 decades. I also will discuss about issues and challenges of attaining a blue economy, particularly in developing coastal states and small island nations. And moving forward, I will provide or outline a number of strategies towards achieving this blue economy, particularly applicable in the context of coastal and small island nations. And I'll conclude my presentations after that. Now, looking into what is the definitions of a blue economy. Now, one can say that blue economy is a macro economy concept promoting and sustainable utilizations of ocean resources and environment, while